Chapter 2944 Chapter 18, Shocking Technique. Chapter 2944 Chapter 18, Shocking Technique. Jiu Tong's words were cold and determined, and even his teammates could feel his anger and disdain for Wu Lingling. Bingshou, you support from range once the match begins. Liyun, you keep her distracted with feints. I'll land the finesse. Hi+ing blow on her, Jiu Tong said to his teammates as he unsheathed his two daggers. However, make sure to be careful when you attack her, Liyun. Wu Lingling might be a swordsman, but she's even more agile than an sin. She also has numerous attack patterns. Make sure you do not get caught up with her for too long. It doesn't matter even if your strength is greater than hers. You won't be able to cope with her attacks once the fight prolongs. I understand. You can rest assured, Boss Jiu. Liyun, a berserker who was nearly 2 meters tall and clad in armor, said and nodded. Liyun was well aware of Wu Lingling's strengths. Even his instructor had praised Wu Lingling for her offensive capabilities in one-on-one combat. When it came to one-on-one combat, Wu Lingling was the undisputed number 1 among the freshmen this year, and even Jiu Tong was slightly weaker than her in this regard. Meanwhile, Liyun couldn't last more than 10 seconds in a frontal confrontation against Jiu Tong, so he'd be foolish to try to win against Wu Lingling by himself. Bingshou, when you're attacking Wu Lingling, you don't need to care about me or Liyun. Just make sure Wu Lingling cannot chain her attacks, Jiu Tong said as he looked at the short-haired girl, who wielded a bow and wore light armor, standing beside Liyun. Many people are watching this compet. I tie on. We cannot let Wu Lingling have any chances at showing us off. When the girl named Bingshou heard Jiu Tong's words, her expression immediately sharpened. At this time, she and Liyun had already been recognized as reserve internal members of Shadow. Meanwhile, the treatment they would receive as internal members would depend on their performance in today's compet. I tie on. While Jiu Tong was discussing strategies with his teammates, the timer above the waiting area finished counting down. Immediately, the trio found themselves teleported into a forest and saw Wu Lingling, who wielded 2 longswords and was clad in light silver armor, standing beside a large tree that was around 100 yards away from them. Along with the start of the match, the spectators in the arena also started making a racket. It's finally starting. A forest. Wu Lingling might still have a chance after all. The question now is whether Jiu Tong will go for a one-on-one fight. I heard that Jiu Tong is treating Wu Lingling as his rival and that he intends on beating her to secure himself as number 1 among the freshmen. What a pity. If Wu Lingling's instructor wasn't that Hi+Fong, we could have witnessed an interesting match today. The many students, instructors, and guild executives present held a hushed discussion as they looked at the holographic display with great interest. After Wu Xiaoxiao, Wu Lingling's, and Jiu Tong's names received the most attention in the GODS Domain Academy right now. Many people would also frequently compare the two with each other. Some people even believed that this generation's freshmen would lead the GODS Domain Academy into its golden era because of these 2 students. However, to everyone's surprise and confusion, Wu Lingling had actually chosen to apprentice under Shadow's ex-guild leader. Now, because of Hi+Fong, she even had to go up against Jiu Tong's team of 3 all by herself. While the spectators outside were discussing among themselves, Jiu Tong did not remain idle on the battlefield. Don't let her escape our sight. Bingshou, seal her movements. Liyun, charge with me. After arriving on the battlefield, Jiu Tong immediately analyzed the battlefield and shouted instructions to his teammates. Simultaneously, he activated his stealth skill and charged at Wu Lingling without hesitation. When Liyun heard Jiu Tong's command, he instantly reacted and activated the Tier 3 flame charge, transforming into a huge ball of flames that charged at Wu Lingling. As for Bingshou, she drew her longbow and used the Tier 3 wind wings against Wu Lingling. Then, as soon as she released her bow, 8 arrows shot out of her bow and transformed into blades of wind that flew at Wu Lingling from multiple directions, cutting off Wu Lingling's paths of escape. When Luo Tiancheng, who sat in the spectator stands, saw the actions of Jiu Tong's team, he couldn't help but sneer and think, as expected of the guild leader's little brother, beautifully done. Originally, Luo Tiancheng had still been rather worried that Ji Yutong would grow soft-hearted against his opponent and choose to fight Wu Lingling one-on-one. If that happened, it would give Wu Lingling a significantly greater chance of winning. That, in turn, would improve SHI plus Feng's performance as an instructor. Thankfully, Ji Yutong did not choose to fight Wu Lingling one-on-one. Moreover, he had even wisely instructed his teammate to seal off Wu Lingling's paths of retreat. Now, Wu Lingling had no choice but to clash against Ji Yutong's team of 3. In such a situation, Ji Yutong's team was almost certain to win. It might even become a landslide victory. If that happened, Wu Xiaoxiao, the Academy's top talent, would definitely come and find trouble with SHI plus Feng. Meanwhile, when Lin Yaoyu saw the development on the battlefield, she couldn't help but frown and glance at SHI plus Feng, who sat in front of her. What is he thinking? Lin Yaoyu couldn't help but be confused by SHI plus Feng's actions. While she wasn't interested in the affairs between SHI plus Feng and Shadow, that didn't mean she was willing to watch one of the Academy's top talents suffer a humiliating defeat in front of so many people. Moreover, SHI plus Feng had just arrived at the GODS Domain Academy. Logically, if he wanted to raise his position in the Academy or prove his value to Shadow, he should cherish Wu Lingling a lot. After all, there had been many instances in the past where instructors of the Academy had received a huge promotion because of a talented student. This was also why the Academy's instructors were willing to sacrifice a lot of their time and resources into nurturing their students. However, no matter how Lin Yaoyu looked at the current situation, it did not seem like SHI plus Feng was trying to nurture Wu Lingling at all. On the contrary, he seemed to be trying to harm Wu Lingling's future. Back on the battlefield, Lai Yun had already arrived before Wu Lingling and swung his battle axe at her, the two-handed weapon releasing a blinding radiance and increasing in size as it made its way to Wu Lingling. At the same time, Ji Yutong had used shadow steps and appeared behind Wu Lingling. Then, he brandished his daggers at Wu Lingling's back. Die. Combat technique, Phantom Snake. Immediately, the two gleaming daggers transformed into multiple phantom snakes that struck at Wu Lingling from various blind spots, the attacks seamlessly timed with Lieyun's gigantified axe. How ruthless! The various instructors and guild executives were astonished when they saw Ji Yutong and Lieyun's joint AS Salt. The two students' joint AS Salt was something even veteran experts like themselves would have trouble dealing with if their basic attributes were equalized. This was because the two students were attacking with the intention of trading lives. In the case of Lieyun, he was attacking Wu Lingling without paying any regard to his defense. He was fully intent on receiving any counterattacks Wu Lingling launched with his body. Moreover, to ensure his attack landed on Wu Lingling, he had even chosen to use an AoE skill with wide coverage. And seeing how close Ji Yutong was to Wu Lingling, it would seem that Lieyun intended on hitting Wu Lingling even at the cost of hitting Ji Yutong. As for Ji Yutong, he showed no intentions of dodging Lieyun's attack, either. Instead, he focused all of his attention on striking Wu Lingling's weak points and sealing off any possible paths of retreat for the swordsman. In this situation, even if Wu Lingling had noticed Ji Yutong's presence behind her, there was nothing she could do to avoid both Lieyun's and Ji Yutong's suicidal attacks. The only thing she could do was choose to dodge one of their attacks. However, no matter which attack Wu Lingling chose to evade, she would still end up getting killed by the other person's attack. Normally, in a 3-on-1 situation, the side with the numerical advantage wouldn't have chosen such a suicidal combat method. Instead, they would rely on their numerical advantage to suppress and whittle down their opponent. Yet, Ji Yutong's team had chosen this suicidal combat method to ensure their victory and leave Wu Lingling with no opportunities to make a comeback. Back on the battlefield, even when Lieyun's gigantified axe and Ji Yutong's shadow snakes were about to devour Wu Lingling actually remained motionless, behaving as if she had not noticed the two attacks coming at her. Did she give up? Ji Yutong couldn't help but be confused when he saw Wu Lingling's lack of reaction. In his opinion, an expert like Wu Lingling should more or less put up a struggle even when faced with such a hopeless situation. Yet, now. It seems I have overestimated you, Ji Yutong said, his eyes filled with disappointment. At the same time, His hands also moved with greater speed as he planned to end this boring battle quickly. However, as soon as Ji Tong finished speaking, a crisp and sweet voice suddenly appeared from beside him. I think so as well. Ji Tong was startled when he heard this voice. This was because he couldn't be any more familiar with this voice. Wu Lingling. This was Wu Lingling's voice. Glancing at the source of the voice, Ji Tong immediately found himself stunned. Through the corner of his eyes, Ji Tong actually saw Wu Lingling standing a short distance away from him, behaving like a spectator as she watched him and Liyun executing their suicidal assault. Ji Tong wasn't the only one who saw this scene. Liyun and Bingshou also saw this scene. However, unlike Ji Tong, they quickly recovered from their shock and started shouting at Ji Tong to get out of the way in a panic. After all, with Liyun's combat standards, he was incapable of altering his attack trajectory this late into his attack. Meanwhile, a full-powered attack from a Tier 3 Berserker was not something a Tier 3 assassin could survive. So, Ji Tong's only chance to live now was to dodge Liyun's attack. Only, that evidently wasn't possible with Ji Tong's current state of mind. Meanwhile, when the various instructors and guild executives saw this scene, they couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Mirage steps. Impossible. Mirage steps is a top-tier footwork among basic combat techniques. Even veteran frontline experts have a hard time learning it. How can a freshman like Wu Lingling master it already? The many experts in the arena quickly understood the cause for two Wu Linglings to appear on the battlefield. Seeing as there were no fluctuations in the mana around Wu Lingling, the girl definitely did not use a skill or spell. Thus, the only explanation they could come up with for this situation was that Wu Lingling had executed Mirage Steps, a basic combat technique. However, Mirage Steps was a special footwork that even frontline experts had difficulty mastering. Anyone capable of mastering it would be regarded as a powerful expert even in first-rate guilds. Is this the reason for his confidence? At this time, even Lin Yaoyu was surprised when she saw this scene, her eyes inadvertently turning to Shi plus Feng, who currently wore a calm expression on his face. Chapter 2945 Chapter 19, Monster. Chapter 2945 Chapter 19, Monster. Most of the spectators in the arena were shocked when they saw the footwork Wu Lingling executed. The only exceptions were Qin Wuchen and the other students who had fought alongside Wu Lingling in the Withered Ruins. Their expressions remained calm throughout the entire process. Meanwhile, after seeing Wu Lingling's performance, Qin Wuchen's friend from high school enviously said to him, "So this is why you decided to follow a newbie instructor, Wuchen. I didn't know you had such a strong class rep. Her footwork is simply amazing. With her taking the lead, your class will be blessed when competing for school resources in the future." The GODS Domain Academy might have abundant resources, it didn't mean that it could afford to waste them. Not to mention, the Academy's goal was to produce expert players. Thus, rather than treating all students equally, the Academy distributed its resources based on the students' performances. While this might seem like a harsh method of education, the world of experts in GODS Domain was cruel. Meanwhile, if students of the Academy wished to obtain more resources, apart from choosing a good instructor and working hard, they could also pray for capable class mates. This was because the Academy would hold monthly class compet tie-ins for resource distribution. In these monthly compet tie-ins, students from the class ranked within the top 3 would each receive a bottle of A-rank nutrient fluid. They would also receive free access to the school's simulation training room for 3 days, allowing them to spar against simulated experts. Although the Academy's simulation training room was inferior to that of first-rate guilds, it was still significantly better than the simulation training room of most large guilds. However, as operating a simulation training room consumed high-level energy, even first-rate guilds experts had few opportunities to use it. Moreover, these experts typically had to pay a huge price to use their guild's simulation training rooms. Yet, the GODS Domain Academy was offering this opportunity to its students for free. Thus, the Academy's monthly class compet tie-ins were extraordinarily intense. Meanwhile, Having capable students like Wu Lingling in a class SS was sure to increase the class SSS chances of ranking within the monthly compet. Itaeon's top 3. Amazing footwork. Qin Wuchen couldn't help but look at his friend strangely. The class SS rep is simply evading Jiyu Tong and Lieyun's joint AS salt normally. I don't know what those two are thinking. Why are they using such predictable attacks? They're not even comparable to the half-orc fighters. Or are they probing the class SS rep? Hearing Qin Wuchen's comments, Xiao Yuheng, another one of SHI plus Feng's students, nodded in agreement and said, that's probably the case. The class SS rep is the only freshman who rivals Jiyu Tong, so Jiyu Tong must be checking to see if the class SS rep is qualified for him to get serious. But isn't this too simple of a probe? It feels like he is looking down on the class SS rep. Xiao Yuheng considered Wu Lingling's current performance to be standard. Wu Lingling was neither underperforming nor overperforming. After fighting in the withered ruins for over a dozen hours, Wu Lingling had already become capable of holding her ground against 3 demonized half-orc fighters. As for the other students in SHI plus Feng's class SS, while they couldn't match Wu Lingling's performance, they could still withstand the joint AS salt of 2 half-orc fighters. Meanwhile, the half-orc fighters' attack patterns were varied and constantly changing. It was especially true when they worked together. If one was not careful when going up against multiple half-orc fighters, one would quickly find themselves overwhelmed. However, Jiyu Tong and Lieyun's joint AS salt was nothing like that. While Jiyu Tong and Lieyun might seem to have good coordination with each other, their attack patterns were simple and predictable. So long as one grasped the timing of their attacks, it wouldn't be difficult to dodge their joint AS salt. In Xiao Yuheng's opinion, at least half of SHI plus Feng's class SS could dodge this joint AS salt, let alone Wu Lingling, the class SSS top student. As for the afterimages Wu Lingling created, that was merely the byproduct of an evasive maneuver, which was part of the aerobic exercise SHI plus Feng had taught them previously. The evasive maneuver required them to exert the muscles in their entire body during the moment of evasion, going from static to top speed instantly. Not only could the instantaneous burst of speed prevent their opponents from predicting the trajectory of their evasion and launching follow-up attacks, but it could also fool their opponent's vision, making their opponents see an afterimage of themselves. During the training session in the withered ruins, SHI plus Feng had already explained the theory behind this evasive maneuver to them. Meanwhile, the faster one could go from static to top speed, the more realistic one's afterimage. However, the fact that Wu Lingling had managed to create a realistic afterimage with her evasive maneuver shouldn't be regarded as anything amazing. On the contrary, the afterimage should be considered an unwanted byproduct instead. When a truly powerful expert executed an evasive maneuver, they wouldn't create any visual afterimages at all. Instead, they would vanish from their opponent's field of vision completely, their evasive technique making it so that their opponent's brain became unaware of their presence. To be precise, the evasive technique created visual signals so complex that the human brain couldn't process them. Thus, the brain would actively ignore such signals, thereby erasing the technique user's presence completely. Indeed, at least half of our class SS can dodge such a simple probing attempt. I honestly don't know what's going through Jiyu Tong's and Lieyun's minds, Qin Wuchen said, nodding in agreement with Xiao Yuheng's comment. However, as soon as Qin Wuchen finished speaking, his high school class mate and the freshmen from other class says sitting nearby were immediately rendered speechless. Simple probing attempt. At least half the class SS could dodge it. Were they even speaking the same language? It should be known that Wu Lingling's current performance had amazed even the many guild executives present. Yet, Qin Wuchen and Xiao Yuheng regarded Wu Lingling's performance as nothing special. Did these two think everyone else was an idiot? While everyone was talking about Wu Lingling's footwork, Jiyu Tong had used the Tier 3 life-saving skill Shadowless Step to forcibly enter stealth. Then, he used the 0.5-second invulnerability period the skill provided to tank Lieyun's attack, allowing him to avoid the awkward situation of getting heavily injured due to friendly fire. However, after using up his life-saving skill, Ji Yutong fell into the predicament of having no means of escaping Wu Lingling's follow-up attacks. The S Sin Kla SS wasn't designed for frontal combat. The Kla SSSHI plus ned most when executing surprise attacks and dexterous combat methods. In contrast, not only was Wu Lingling's swordsman Kla SS adept at frontal combat, but Wu Lingling herself was also known for her agile combat style. Because of these factors, Ji Yutong continuously lost HP when he clashed blades with Wu Lingling. And although Lai Yun was frantically trying to attack Wu Lingling from behind, Wu Lingling seemingly had eyes growing on the back of her head as she could always evade Lai Yun's attacks at the very last moment. In this situation, Lai Yun might as well not exist as his attacks were hardly doing anything to affect Wu Lingling's fight with Ji Yutong. Damn it! How is she so strong? Has she been hiding her strength all this time? Feelings of frustration and confusion filled Ji Yutong's heart as he desperately tried to defend against Wu Lingling's attacks. Lai Yun and Bingshou also experienced the same feelings when they saw Wu Lingling evade every one of their attacks with little effort. After the clash continued for around 20 seconds, Wu Lingling successfully whittled Ji Yutong to death. As for Lai Yun and Bingshou, they didn't even last 20 seconds against Wu Lingling after losing their team's core. When the administrative system announced the end of the match, silence filled the arena's spectator stands as everyone turned to watch Wu Lingling climb out of her virtual gaming cabin, their eyes looking at Wu Lingling as if they were looking at a monster. Chapter 2946 Chapter 20. Merely a Junior Instructor. Chapter 2946 Chapter 20. Merely a junior instructor. What a monstrous talent. Even the top talents of first-rate guilds can hold a candle to her. I never thought Wu Lingling's talent would actually surpass that of Wu Xiaoxiao's. Shortly after Wu Lingling exited her gaming cabin, voices of exclamation filled the arena. The academy's instructors and various guild executives, in particular, looked at Wu Lingling as if she were their golden goose. As for Luo Tiancheng, his eyes were close to popping out of their sockets as he looked at Wu Lingling in utter disbelief. Impossible. How can Wu Lingling be this strong? Ji Yutong, the younger cousin of Shadow's current guild leader Ji Yiren, had actually lost to Wu Lingling even while having a numerical advantage. After this incident, Shadow's plans to expand its influence in the GODS Domain Academy had thoroughly become a joke. Meanwhile, unlike everyone else in the arena, Lin Yaoyu did not focus her gaze on Wu Lingling. Instead, she looked at SHI plus Feng, who sat in front of her. So this was what he meant. Lin Yaoyu had previously been confused when she heard SHI plus Feng saying, "It won't be interesting if I send too many." However, after witnessing this match, she found that SHI plus Feng's words indeed made sense. With Wu Lingling's strength, if the girl gained 2 more people to support her, the match probably would have ended as soon as it began. Ji Yutong's team wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to put up any resistance, and the match wouldn't have lasted for several dozen seconds. However, after looking at SHI plus Feng for a moment, Lin Yaoyu couldn't help but sigh and look at the man with a sympathetic gaze. Originally, SHI plus Feng could have relied on Wu Lingling to make a name for himself in the academy and even secure a respectable position in Jinhai City. Unfortunately, it was a sin to possess treasure without having the strength to protect it. In the current era, GODS Domain had already become a second world for people. In fact, its importance even surpassed that of the real world. After all, people could essentially double their lifespans by living in GODS Domain. Thus, GODS Domain had also become a place of competition for both individuals and competition. Meanwhile, organizations seeking to secure a better standing in GODS Domain needed to recruit highly talented individuals. Although Ji Yutong was recognized as a genius by GODS Domain Academy, he could only be regarded as such in a third-rate city like Jinhai City. One could find many other geniuses like him in the various first-rate guilds. Thus, none of the various first-rate guilds in GODS Domain had deemed it necessary to poach him before he met the Academy's requirements to join a guild. Previously, this was also the case for Wu Lingling. Although the first-rate guild Dazzle Wave had already shown signs of trying to recruit Wu Lingling, That was only because of Wu Xiaoxiao's influence and Wu Lingling's relatively good talent. If it weren't for her elder sister, Wu Lingling definitely wouldn't have received such treatment. However, the situation was different now. The talent Wu Lingling displayed had already surpassed that of Wu Xiaoxiao, the Academy's current star, let alone Jiyu Tong. The various first-rate guilds would definitely fight to recruit such a talent. SHI Plus Feng was merely a junior instructor at the Academy who possessed no backing whatsoever. The Academy wouldn't allow SHI Plus Feng to nurture a top-tier talent like Wu Lingling. After all, Wu Lingling was the Academy's chance to make a name for itself throughout the country. The Academy's influential senior instructors probably wouldn't let go of this opportunity, either. Apart from Lin Yaoyu, many of the intermediate instructors also looked at SHI Plus Feng with sympathetic gazes. After all, every one of the Academy's senior instructors had already run to the Academy's dean by now, evidently trying to secure her as their apprentice. Moreover, Senior Instructor Qi was even among these people. Not only did Instructor Qi possess deep ties with Shadow, but he was also Jiyu Tong's instructor. Although the Academy's rules indicated that students couldn't change their instructors for a year after they apprenticed themselves under an instructor, it wasn't impossible to circumvent this rule. So long as the students and instructors involved agreed to the change, students could change instructors at any time. As for top-tier geniuses like Wu Lingling, they wouldn't even need their instructors' consent to change instructors. Wu Zhenyang, who was seated in the VIP section, was presently experiencing a huge headache. Jinhai City's GODS Domain Academy had 4 senior instructors, and every one of them was an influential individual in Jinhai City. They had nurtured many professional players throughout their career, and even the city's various large guilds respected them greatly. Yet, now, because of Wu Lingling's fight, all 4 of these senior instructors had come running to him in an attempt to secure Wu Lingling as their student. They didn't even care that there were a bunch of guild executives sitting around them. "Dean, this is the first time our academy has seen a student as talented as Wu Lingling. We must develop her using the best resources available." "That's right. SHI Plus Feng is merely a newly hired junior instructor. He doesn't have any resources in GODS domain, either. The responsibility of nurturing Wu Lingling is too heavy for him. You should leave it to me instead. Dean, I've helped nurture many professional players for the academy these past few years, but I have never encountered a truly excellent sapling. How about letting me nurture Wu Lingling? I promise she will have a much brighter future than Wu Xiaoxiao. I can even guarantee that she will make it into the A-League." 3 of the 4 senior instructors blabbered away like desperate salesmen in front of Wu Zhenyang, their usual arrogance nowhere to be seen. When the various guild executives sitting nearby saw this scene, they couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. Meanwhile, shortly after the 3 senior instructors finished their sales talk, Instructor Qi, the youngest out of the 4 senior instructors, looked at Wu Zhenyang and solemnly said, "Wu Lingling's talent is exceptional, Dean. If you are willing to let Wu Lingling come under my wing, I promise to give her a training slot in World Domination's branch headquarters." As soon as Instructor Qi made his offer, the other 3 senior instructors and various guild executives couldn't help but gasp. None of them had expected Instructor Qi to be willing to pay such a huge price. As a super guild, World Domination was a bona fide Titan in GODS domain. It was an existence that far surpassed said the various first-rate guilds. Although they had no idea how Instructor Qi had managed to form a connection with a super guild like World Domination, the fact that he was willing to part with a training slot in World Domination was simply absurd. Even if it was only a branch headquarters training slot, it was still something countless geniuses sought to obtain. The training one could acquire through this training slot was something no first-rate guild could ever hope to provide. If Wu Lingling could receive World Domination's training slot, her future would be limitless. This, Wu Zhenyang hesitated to make a decision. After thinking for a long time, he looked at the 4 senior instructors in front of him and said, "I cannot arbitrarily agree to your requests. This matter requires the approval of Instructor SHI Plus and Wu Lingling herself. If the 2 of them agree to the change, I won't have any problems with it, either." "Is that so?" Wu Zhenyang's words put the 4 senior instructors into thought for a moment. Then, without saying anything more, the four of them turned around and left. Wu Zhenyang had already made it clear with his words that he did not wish to offend anyone and that he wouldn't meddle in this affair. Thus, it was up to them to persuade Wu Lingling to become their apprentice. As for SHI plus Feng, he was a non-factor. He was merely a junior instructor in the academy, after all. He had nothing to offer Wu Lingling. According to the rumors they heard, he was even someone dismissed by Shadow. So long as Wu Lingling agreed to become their apprentice, it wouldn't matter even if SHI plus Feng opposed the change. After the four senior instructors left the VIP section, Wu Zhenyang and the various guild executives returned their attention to the central display. However, after witnessing the match between Wu Lingling and Ji Yutong's team, it became a little boring to watch the matches of the other students. 2 hours later, the freshman compet. I Taion ended without any suspense. To Nobody's surprise, Wu Lingling became the compet. I Taion's champion and won the privilege of visiting the secret pavilion's branch headquarters a few days later, earning the envy of Ji Yutong and the other freshmen. After the freshman compet, I Taion ended, Ji Yutong went out of his way to appear before Wu Lingling and enthusiastically declared, "Just you wait, Wu Lingling. You might have won this time, but don't think I'll just let you have Instructor Chi's training slot in world domination so easily." After saying so, Ji Yutong turned around and left. However, despite his arrogant statement, none of the freshmen nearby thought that he was being overconfident. After all, everyone present was aware that Ji Yutong's cousin was Ji Yiren, Shadow's current present and a genius nurtured internally by world domination. The resources he had access to far surpassed that of the average person. However, Wu Lingling couldn't help but be confused by this situation. Since when did she possess a training slot in world domination? Ignore that crazy BASTARD, Klar. SS Rep. Instructor SHI Plus told us to get online as soon as the compet. I Taion ends. Qin Wuchen reminded Wu Lingling when he saw her deep in thought. We'll be exploring the Withered Ruins inner region next. We might miss the chance to get in if we're late. Upon hearing Qin Wuchen's words, Wu Lingling quickly snapped out of her daze and followed Qin Wuchen to the academy's rest area. GODS Domain Academy, Instructor's Rest Area. Just as SHI Plus Feng was about to enter one of the private rooms and log into GODS Domain, a familiar figure approached him. This person was none other than Luo Tiancheng, the right-hand man of Shadow's director Lan Hailong. At this moment, though, instead of the hostile and contemptuous expression he previously wore, Luo Tiancheng currently wore a wide smile on his face. "What are you looking at me like that for, Instructor Luo?" SHI Plus Feng calmly asked as he looked at the hindrance blocking his way. "Do you have some good news to tell me?" "You guessed correctly. I did come here with good news," Luo Tiancheng said, nodding. "The Academy's senior instructor Qi has set his sights on Wu Lingling, so Director Lan plans to give you a chance. So long as you hand over the position of Wu Lingling's instructor, Director Lan will allow you back into Shadow. Although you won't be able to return to the guild leader position, it shouldn't be a problem for you to become a team leader for one of the guild's second-line teams. With that position, you won't have to worry about money for the rest of your life." "I see." SHI Plus Feng had more or less expected something like this to happen, so he wasn't surprised by Luo Tiancheng's good news. Calmly, he said, "In that case, I'll have to trouble you to pass a word to Director Lan, Instructor Luo." "What is it?" Luo Tiancheng asked with a puzzled look. Scram. Chapter 21, Arrogant SHI Plus Feng. Chapter 21, Arrogant SHI Plus Feng. Jinhai City, the top floor of Hailong Tower. Hailong Tower was one of the tallest buildings located in the central business district of Jinhai City. It also served as the Lan Hua Group's trademark building. Meanwhile, the room located on Hailong Tower's top floor was a luxurious room that granted one an uninterrupted view of Jinhai City. However, at this moment, even though there were only 2 people inside this room, the atmosphere in the room was incredibly tense. Of the 2 people in the room, the one standing was Luo Tiancheng, while the one sitting on the luxurious leather sofa was a solemn man in his mid-30s. "What did you say?" Lan Hailong asked rhetorically, his cold voice sending SHI plus vers down Luo Tiancheng's spine. Are you trying to tell me that not only did SHI plus Feng refuse my kindness, but he even had you convey to me the word scram? The ident. Tai of the solemn man was none other than Lan Hailong, the true wielder of authority behind the Shadow Guild and the Lan Hua group. He was also the legendary individual who had climbed to the top of Jinhai City by relying on his great business ACU men in investing all of the Lan Hua group's available resources into tackling GODS domain since the game's launch and continuously expanding Shadow's influence in GODS domain. All of my words are true, Chief Lan. I even have a complete recording of SHI plus Feng's words here, Luo Tiancheng hurriedly said. He was incredibly arrogant back then. He showed no regard for Shadow at all. I wanted nothing more than to teach him a lesson on the spot. Raising an eyebrow at Luo Tiancheng, Lan Hailong asked, "Why didn't you take action, then?" An awkward expression suddenly appeared on Luo Tiancheng's face as he said, "That's the GODS Domain Academy we're talking about, Chief Lan. There are many people there. Although I have a much stronger physique than SHI plus Feng, I won't be able to do any serious damage to him within a short time. Rather than teaching a lesson, he might end up using the fight as an excuse to file a complaint. Enough with the excuses," Lan Hailong said, stopping Luo Tiancheng in his tracks. "Do you think I'm not aware that you're no match for SHI plus Feng? You might have a stronger physique, but his combat experience far says yours. You'd be fortunate if you could fight him to a draw, let alone teach him a lesson." Hearing Lan Hailong's words, Luo Tiancheng dared not continue making excuses for himself and simply accepted Lan Hailong's harsh criticism. What Lan Hailong said was true, after all. No matter how weak SHI plus Feng was in the past, he was still the guild leader of Shadow. Thanks to his high status, he had gotten many opportunities to spar with master-level martial artists. He could easily overcome the small difference in physique with the wealth of combat experience he had account. You mulated over the past decade. Chief Lan, should I find an opportunity to go and take care of him with Brother Hu? Luo Tiancheng suggested. The brother who Luo Tiancheng mentioned was Ju Yuhu, the deputy chief instructor of Shadow's training center. Although Ju Yuhu didn't possess much skill in GODS domain, he had not stopped training his body in the real world for even a day throughout the past decade. When it came to combat in the real world, he easily ranked within the top 5 of Shadow. However, Lan Hailong shook his head and dismissively said, "That won't be necessary. SHI plus Feng might pose a problem if he were 5 years younger, but his time is already over now. He won't be a threat to us even if we let him be." "Are we going to let him go just like that, Chief Lan?" Luo Tiancheng asked in an unreconciled tone. "You have no idea how arrogantly he acted at the time. He showed no respect to Shadow at all. That's normal." Lan Hailong chuckled. He now has an excellent student under his belt, so of course, he has the capital to be arrogant. Even that famous instructor Qi has directly contacted me for this student. It is already certain that Wu Lingling will surpass Wu Xiaoxiao in the future. She might even get recruited by a super guild in the future and surpass the golden generation brought up by Instructor Qi. Instructor Qi was one of the GODS Domain Academy's senior instructors. He was an existence that even the executives of Jinhai City's various large guilds had to treat with respect. The reason for this was that several years ago, 2 of his students had successfully joined the Super Guild World Domination. Now, those 2 students had even become members of World Domination's middle management. Their positions were much more prestigious compared to Jiyu Iren, Shadow's current guild leader. After all, Jiyu Iren was merely one of the many geniuses nurtured by World Domination. He would have to first surpass his peers before he would have a chance at joining World Domination's middle management. It was precisely this reason that Instructor Qi held such prestigious status in the GODS Domain Academy and that Jiyu Iren had signed his younger cousin to become Instructor Qi's apprentice. Now that Wu Lingling had shown herself to possess talent surpassing even her elder sister, it was entirely possible for her to join the middle management of a super guild in the future if she received proper training. At that time, SHI plus Feng could rely on his connection with Wu Lingling to put pressure on Shadow. In front of a super guild, a second-rate guild like Shadow was nothing but an insignificant ant. If Shadow failed to handle the situation properly, it might even become history in God's domain. With such a powerful card in his hand, it'd be strange if Shi plus Feng didn't behave arrogantly. It was also for this reason that Luo Tiancheng was incredibly envious of Shi plus Feng. He couldn't understand how Shi plus Feng could be so lucky to acquire a student like Wu Lingling. However, Shi plus Feng won't be able to stay arrogant for very long, Lan Hailong said, smiling. A good student is all that he has. If this good student ceases to be his student, he will know how laughable his behavior today is. Chief Lan, don't tell me you're planning on using that slot? Luo Tiancheng asked as he suddenly thought of something. Yes. Lan Hailong nodded. While the legacies in those special dungeons are valuable, they're worth nothing if we don't have the necessary talent to make use of them. Rather than waste our legacy slot on an ordinary genius, it'd be much better if we use it to win over Wu Lingling. With our legacy slot and the benefits Instructor Qi offered, Wu Lingling will definitely choose to go under Instructor Qi so long as she isn't a fool. Leave it to you to come up with such a brilliant plan, Chief Lan. If Shi plus Feng finds out about this, he'll definitely regret the words he said today, Luo Tiancheng said. He couldn't help but laugh when he thought back to Shi plus Feng's arrogant behavior before. According to the various large guilds' investigations, there were special dungeons located throughout the miniature ancient world. Meanwhile, these dungeons were 1,000-man team dungeons that had never been seen on the main continent before. However, the huge entrance limit and 1-week cooldown of these dungeons wasn't what made them special. Instead, what made them special was the ancient legacies they dropped. By using these ancient legacies, players would get to inherit crucial information about their respective classes, which would, in turn, increase their chances of advancing to higher tiers in the future. Although nobody knew how much improvement these ancient legacies could provide as of yet, even a tiny improvement would make invaluable items. After all, one would typically have to rely on luck to encounter items and events that improved one's chances of ascending to a higher tier. However, raiding these special dungeons was easier said than done. Apart from gathering 1,000 experts, one would also need to make sure that the gathered experts were sufficiently skilled. At the very least, these experts needed to be capable of reaching the late stage of the Trial Tower's 6th floor. With such stringent requirements, even Shadow, a second-rate guild, could only form one such team. It'd be impossible for an independent player like Shi plus Feng to form such a team. Alright, that's it for today. After you return, make sure you find an opportunity to make contact with Wu Lingling, Lan Hailong said. Remember to be quick. Wu Xiaoxiao is still out training with her instructor right now, so she shouldn't be aware of her sister's talent yet. Leave it to me, Chief Lan, Luo Tiancheng said confidently. Immediately afterward, Luo Tiancheng left Hailong Tower and hurried back to the God's Domain Academy. Meanwhile, inside the miniature ancient world, Shi plus Feng and his students had finally finished resting and organizing themselves in the withered ruins outer region. After seeing that all of his students had recovered, Shi plus Feng nodded and said, "Alright, time to head inside." Chapter 22, Primordial Archaic Species. Chapter 22, Primordial Archaic Species. Withered Ruins. Inner Region. Upon entering the inner region, Shi plus Feng and his students were greeted by a street lined with dilapidated buildings covered in trees and vines. A strong stench of blood also filled the air, the stench originating from the numerous half-orc corpses that covered the street. Amazing. I can't believe Soulfire managed to clear out so many High Lords and Great Lords, Qin Wuchen exclaimed when he saw the corpses covering the dilapidated street. Even at a glance, he could tell that over 10,000 fresh monster corpses covered the street. Meanwhile, every one of these demonized half-orcs was a level 105 High Lord or above. Yet, Soulfire's members had managed to defeat all of these demonized half-orcs with just a team of 200. Even if one searched through the entire 100-flow city, one was unlikely to find more than a handful of such teams. Standing beside Qin Wuchen, Wu Lingling nodded her head in shock. Then, she sighed in relief and said, "Thankfully, we didn't come in before them." Otherwise, we might not even get the chance to escape if we have to face so many demonized half-orcs. The other students on the team also nodded in agreement. Before entering the inner region, everyone was excited to finally grind in the inner region. After all, only a few teams from 100 Flow City could grind in the Withered Ruins inner region. Any team that could grind here would all be made up of top-tier experts. If their team could grind here as well, they would gain a lot of bragging rights among their peers at school. However, after seeing the large number of half-orc corpses littering the street before them, they couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Although they had already made significant improvements in their combat standards after grinding in the outer region, those improvements were nowhere near enough to help them survive in the inner region. The difference between the Withered Ruins inner and outer regions was simply too massive. In the outer region, even the biggest group they faced only had 400 or 500 demonized half-orcs. The number of great lords in these groups was also few and far between. However, judging by the Saker before them, the inner region's monsters should move in groups of thousands or more. Moreover, each group should have hundreds of great lords and even several dozen grand lords. It should be known that players who entered the miniature ancient world would have their basic attributes suppressed. Currently, even Tier 3 experts had difficulty facing great lords in a one-on-one situation. As for grand lords, a party of 6 experts would be needed to deal with one at the very minimum. Yet, just one group of monsters in the Withered Ruins inner region had several dozen grand lords. If all of these grand lords attacked together, even a 1,000-man expert team of the same level would face annihilation if they weren't careful, let alone their small team of 31 players. At this time, Xiao Yuheng, a girl with long golden hair and long pointed ears, suggested to SHI Plus Feng, Instructor SHI Plus, how about we go back to the outer region and grind there? The inner region is far too dangerous for our team to deal with. Xiao Yuheng's combat power ranked among the top 5 of SHI Plus Feng students. Upon hearing her suggestion, the other students promptly nodded their heads in agreement. While SHI Plus Feng's mana domain allowed him to toy with Great Lord-ranked demonized half-orcs previously, the present situation was different. The scale of the monsters was simply too great. With how many monsters there were, it wouldn't matter even if SHI Plus Feng's mana domain could weaken them. These monsters would still trample over their team easily. Meanwhile, SHI Plus Feng wasn't surprised by his students' reactions. Any normal player would make such a judgment. Chuckling, he said, "What you say is correct. This place is no longer suitable for you to grind in. With your current strength, even the smallest monster group here would annihilate us." But who said that we were here to grind? SHI Plus Feng's words instantly stunned everyone present. Did we not come to the Withered Ruins to grind, Instructor SHI Plus? Wu Lingling curiously asked. Others might not know it, but Wu Lingling knew that SHI Plus Feng had an agreement with Mysterious Moon's Zhui Yalin. For the sake of acquiring the Dark Moon Outpost's resources, SHI Plus Feng had promised to bring 30 experts to help Mysterious Moon in contesting for the outpost. Meanwhile, SHI Plus Feng's so-called experts were none other than his students. If they didn't quickly raise their levels right now, they would be making a fool of themselves once it was time to compete for the Dark Moon Outpost. They might even become enemies with Mysterious Moon. After all, Mysterious Moon had placed significant importance on the Dark Moon Outpost. It was also the guild's first step in contending for the miniature ancient world's resources. The guild couldn't allow any mistakes to happen. In response to Wu Lingling's question, SHI Plus Feng put on a serious face and said, "That's right. We have already done enough grinding in the outer region. Our goal in entering the inner region now isn't to level up, but to improve our equipment instead. Our leveling speed will be greatly affected if we don't have adequate weapons and equipment." However, despite seeing the logic in SHI Plus Feng's words, everyone couldn't help but be rendered speechless. If they couldn't even beat the inner region's monsters, how could they improve their weapons and equipment? "Don't worry and just follow me. Looking at the battle traces, they shouldn't have moved too far away from us," SHI Plus Feng said, chuckling when he saw everyone's exasperated expressions. Then, he turned around and started marching down the dilapidated street, making his way toward the city's center. Meanwhile, Wu Lingling and the others couldn't help but turn to look at each other, none of them able to make sense of their instructor's words. In a situation where they couldn't even beat the monsters they faced, how were they supposed to improve their weapons and equipment? After Wu Lingling and the others followed SHI plus Feng through the corpse-laden streets for half an hour, they spotted a group of people gathered in front of a ruined plaza some distance ahead. Meanwhile, these people were none other than Southern Tiger and the other members of Soulfire. At this time, though, Southern Tiger and his teammates all bore somber expressions on their faces. Then, when Wu Lingling and the others arrived at the ruined plaza, they couldn't help but gasp in shock. A fallen angel. How can this be? Previously, due to the obstructions around the plaza, Wu Lingling and the others had failed to notice anything strange about the plaza. However, after arriving at the plaza's edge, their eyes were immediately attracted to the strange woman standing quietly in the plaza's center. Specifically, they were attracted by the 3 pairs of pitch-black wings on this woman's back. Meanwhile, this winged woman was none other than a fallen angel, a legendary existence capable of rivaling dragons. In God's domain, dragons were synonymous with natural disasters. They could single-handedly destroy entire kingdoms, and even experts at the peak of Tier 5 would have trouble holding their ground against one. Now that an existence capable of rivaling the mighty dragons had appeared in this place, how could everyone not be frightened? No, she's not a fallen angel, SHI plus Feng said, shaking his head. She's not? Wu Lingling asked. Then, after taking a closer look at the woman quietly standing in the middle of the plaza, she continued, but her appearance is similar to the fallen angels I've seen in books and video record. After Wu Lingling posed her question, a deep voice suddenly entered everyone's ears. He's right. She is indeed not a fallen angel. Upon hearing this voice, Wu Lingling and the other students promptly turned to its source. Then, they couldn't help but be surprised when they saw a middle-aged man wearing silvery-grey heavy armor and carrying 2 SHI plus elds walking over to them. After all, the middle-aged man who spoke was none other than Southern Tiger, one of Soulfire's 16 captains and a mighty expert in God's domain. Seeing the surprised look on the faces of Wu Lingling and the others, Southern Tiger smiled and said, "If you don't believe me, you can check using an identification skill." Upon hearing Southern Tiger's reminder, Wu Lingling and the others promptly used their identification skills on the distant woman. Tyrion, Realm Lord, Primordial Archaic Species, Mythic, Level 106 HP 6 billion. When everyone saw the strange woman's stats, they finally understood that the strange woman was indeed not a fallen angel. Even so, they still couldn't help but gasp when they saw the strange woman's stats. These stats far surpass said what an ordinary Tier 4 mythic monster possess. After seeing the looks of shock on Wu Lingling and the others, Southern Tiger shrugged and said, although she isn't a fallen angel, her strength is unquestionable. It is virtually impossible to kill her at this stage of the game. Tyrion's 6 billion HP and corresponding battle recovery were already more than enough to give current teams in the miniature ancient world a huge headache, let alone Tyrion's other attributes. Hearing Southern Tiger's words, the other members of Soulfire couldn't help but reveal bitter smiles. Originally, they thought their team could become the first team to reap the Withered Ruins' pioneering benefits. Never did they expect to meet such a troublesome existence here. Friend, if you are thinking of sneaking the purple gold treasure chest behind her, I advise you to give up, Southern Tiger said when he noticed SHI plus Feng staring at the treasure chest situated behind the Realm Lord. Smiling, he explained, that treasure chest's defensive magic array is tied with the boss. You can't get the treasure chest if you don't kill the boss. The purple gold treasure chest behind Tyrion naturally tempted Southern Tiger. However, after attempting to acquire it a few times, he found that the treasure chest's defensive magic array was linked with the boss's HP. So long as the boss remained alive, the defensive magic array would have an inexhaustible supply of energy powering it. Thus, his previous attempts to distract the boss and steal the treasure chest ended up failing. Just when Southern Tiger was trying to further dissuade SHI plus Feng from giving up on the treasure chest, SHI plus Feng suddenly said, "Just kill the boss and take the treasure chest, then." Chapter 23, Tier 3 Sword King? Chapter 23, Tier 3 Sword King? SHI plus Feng's words rendered Southern Tiger speechless. As for Moonrain, who stood nearby, she rolled her eyes and cast a scornful gaze at SHI plus Feng, her eyes seemingly saying, "Thank you for stating the obvious. Friend, it's not that we don't want to kill the boss. It's just that this boss simply isn't something we can kill at this stage of the game. We'll need at least a tier 4 metric tons to tank it," Southern Tiger patiently explained. Moreover, even if we do have a tier 4 metric tons to keep the boss distracted right now, it'll still be very challenging to kill this boss with our current DPS. The other members of Soulfire repeatedly nodded to Southern Tiger's words. Every Soulfire member present was a veteran player who had played GODS domain for at least 7 years, so they couldn't be more familiar with the strategies used to hunt wild bosses. While it might seem like players could raid any bosses so long as they could survive the boss's attacks, that wasn't entirely true. An example of an exception would be Tyrion. Despite being a level 100 mythic boss, it had HP surpassing even level 130 mythic bosses. It was no exaggeration to say that Tyrion had the highest HP out of all the level 100 mythic bosses they had seen thus far. Meanwhile, with this much HP, Tyrion could recover 120 million HP every 5 seconds simply by relying on its 2% battle recovery. If a team was incapable of outputting at least 24 million damage per second, it'd be impossible to defeat Tyrion. However, it should be known that due to the miniature Ancient Worlds restrictions, even the peak experts of super guilds could only bring a full set of level 100 epic equipment with them. They couldn't bring any fragmented legendary items or higher. With only epic weapons and equipment, a peak expert would be fortunate to even cause 500,000 damage per second to an ordinary mythic monster, let alone a mythic monster with the Realm Lord title. Moreover, this DPS was calculated based on the assumption that the boss wouldn't dodge or block any attacks. After factoring in these situations, the realistic DPS would need to be halved or more. In other words, only if a 200-man team was composed entirely out of super guild-level peak experts and fully geared in epic weapons and equipment would the team have a chance at killing Tyrion. Trying to raid Tyrion with anything less would be nothing but folly. After hearing Southern Tiger's explanation, Wu Lingling and the other students inwardly expressed their agreement as well. Although they were unfamiliar with raiding mythic bosses, they still knew that the current problem they faced wasn't a lack of combat standards. Instead, it was a matter of their lacking equipment standards and basic attributes. Tyrion simply wasn't a boss they could topple simply by having good techniques and strategies. Meanwhile, after hearing Southern Tiger's explanation, SHI plus Feng also nodded in agreement. Then, he turned to look at Tyrion and said, "The concerns you've stated are indeed problematic. However, I have a special method to make up for our lacking DPS. The only problem is whether we have a sufficiently good MT to contain this boss. In GODS domain, Realm Lords were not existences that ordinary teams could challenge without having a significant advantage in levels. Firstly, it was because Realm Lords possessed great destructive power. Ordinary teams would have difficulty finding an expert capable of tanking a Realm Lord's powerful attacks. Secondly, it was because Realm Lords possessed Astonis HI plusing HP and defense. These two factors combined were more than enough to deter any ordinary team from challenging a Realm Lord. However, these two factors still weren't the most crucial problem. Instead, what made Realm Lords tricky opponents was their mana domains. Not only could they gather dense mana to strengthen their defense, but they could also use this gathered mana to enhance their destructive power. Meanwhile, there were only two solutions to a Realm Lord's mana domain. The first solution was for players to have extraordinary basic attributes and destructive power. The second solution was to destroy the Realm Lord's mana domain, which would, in turn, reduce the Realm Lord's raid difficulty. Only, the latter of the two methods was much more difficult to achieve. Are you serious, friend? Do you really have a way to raid this boss? Southern Tiger eagerly asked when he heard SHI plus Feng's words. That's 6 billion HP we are talking about. Even a 1,000-man team of experts will have trouble toppling such an HP. As the Realm Lord of a level 100 HELL mode regional dungeon, Tyrion was undoubtedly an invincible existence to the current players in the miniature ancient world. If they could successfully raid Tyrion, setting aside the potential rewards, just the fame they could obtain would instantly put them in the spotlight of the entire Hundred Flow City. At this time, even Moonrain couldn't help but take a second look at SHI plus Fong, her eyes filled with surprise and suspicion. Previously, when Southern Tiger told her that SHI plus Fong might be a great expert capable of rivaling Soulfire's honorary Elder Blue Smile, she had more or less been skeptical about his judgment. However, after hearing the words SHI plus Fong just uttered, she was certain that SHI plus Fong wasn't a mighty expert. After all, what SHI plus Fong had just said was simply ludicrous. Anyone with even a bit of knowledge regarding Realm Lords would find his words laughable. Rather than a powerful expert, Moonrain felt that SHI plus Fong was more likely to be a scammer. Now that people worldwide had already acknowledged GODS domain as the second world for humans, the status players held in GODS domain had become just as important as the status they held in the real world. Meanwhile, because of the Soulfire adventurer teams standing in GODS domain, countless people sought to befriend Soulfire's executives. Among these people, many would boast about their ability to accomplish amazing feats just to attract attention to themselves and create the illusion that they were powerful experts. However, when these people were asked to put their words into action, they would back away and start making all sorts of excuses for their inability. In Moonrain's opinion, SHI plus Fong was no different than these people. Thinking up to this point, Moonrain suddenly smiled and looked at SHI plus Fong, saying, "Since you think we can raid the boss, why don't we cooperate? We have many capable MTS here. So long as we can raid this boss, we'll split the loot 30:70. You'll take 70 while we'll take 30. You can treat it as us doing work for you. What do you think?" Upon hearing Moonrain's words, the other Soulfire members present couldn't help but look at her in confusion. Soulfire was a top adventurer team in GODS domain. Typically, when Soulfire raided bosses for others, Soulfire would get at least half of the boss's loot. After all, raiding a boss came with significant risks. It was especially true for wild bosses. Even if players could get resurrected by healers, they would still lose a significant portion of their EXP. Thus, Soulfire's standard practice was to split the loot evenly with the employer. At most, the employer would have priority pick over the loot. Although their team was indeed desperate to raid Tyrion, giving away 70% of the boss's loot was still a little too much. After all, they had 200 players on their side, whereas SHI plus Fong only had 31 players on his side. Not to mention, 30 of these 31 players were students. Anyone could tell that their team would be the one doing the bulk of the work. However, despite their confusion, everyone on Soulfire's team simply kept their opinions to themselves. Moonrain was the team's second-in-command, after all. While the decision she made was a little surprising, it wasn't entirely unreasonable. In such a situation, even Southern Tiger couldn't casually refute her without offering a better solution. At this time, even Wu Lingling and the other students couldn't help but look at Moonrain in surprise. Although they were unfamiliar with raiding mythic bosses, they knew that employing the services of a top adventurer team like Soulfire shouldn't be so cheap. A 30:70 split with Soulfire taking the smaller share would be an unimaginable price in the outside world. Not to mention, Soulfire's services weren't something just anyone could ask for. One would typically have to put a hefty down payment to get Soulfire to move. Moreover, this down payment would not be returned regardless of the task's success. Yet, now, a team from Soulfire was taking the initiative to seek cooperation. It was simply unbelievable. Excited over this situation, Wu Lingling and the others turned to look at SHI plus Fong with expectant gazes. "I'm sorry, but I cannot agree to your offer." SHI plus Fong flatly rejected Moonrain's offer, contrary to everyone's expectations. Then, just when Moonrain was about to laugh and say something, SHI plus Fong added, "A 30:70 split is too small. If we are to cooperate, it'll have to be a 10 hours 90 minutes split at the very least." A 10 hours 90 minutes split? Upon hearing SHI plus Fong's words, Moonrain retracted her laughter and angrily glared at SHI plus Fong. Then, in a sharp tone, she said, "Who do you think you are? On what basis are you asking for such a price? Why don't you rob us instead? Meanwhile, just when the other Soulfire members were about to nod in agreement with Moonrain's words, SHI plus Foam calmly said, on the basis that I am a Tier 3 Sword King with a mana domain. Immediately after SHI plus Foam finished speaking, SPACE around SHI plus Foam suddenly warped, and everyone from Soulfire felt their bodies becoming extremely heavy. Chapter 24. Beyond Epic. Chapter 24. Beyond Epic. How is this possible? What a powerful mana domain. When Soulfire's members felt the frozen SPACE and mist-like mana around them, they couldn't help but turn to look at SHI plus Foam in shock. Moonrain, in particular, was utterly dumbfounded by this situation, the words she had originally prepared to say Vonnie's HI plusing without a trace. Meanwhile, standing behind SHI plus Foam, Wu Lingling and the others revealed faintly smug and prideful expressions on their faces. In GODS domain, although players capable of casting mana domains weren't as rare as a phoenix's feather, they were still very rare existences. Typically, one would only start seeing players with mana domains more frequently after reaching Tier 5. Even then, only 1 or 2 out of 10 Tier 5 players would be capable of casting a mana domain. Moreover, most of them were magical class SS players. Meanwhile, Tier 5 players were apex existences in GODS domain. They would be considered big shots even in the various super guilds. Thus, SHI plus Foam's ability to cast a mana domain at Tier 3 was practically legendary in GODS domain. According to rumors, only GODS domain's Tier 6 GOD ranked experts were capable of such a feat. Miss Moon, may I know if I am qualified now? SHI plus Foam calmly asked as he looked at Moonrain's frozen expression. There was no hint of anger or print in his voice as he spoke. It sounded as if he was merely bringing up an insignificant matter. However, when Moonrain snapped out of her daze, she couldn't help but be at a loss for words, an embarrassed said expression on her face. This was because SHI plus Foam's words had put her in a bind. Even if she admitted that SHI plus Foam was qualified, with her status as Southern Tiger's vice-captain, she did not have the authority to offer the 10 hours 90 minutes split price SHI plus Foam was asking for. Yet, if she said that SHI plus Foam was unqualified and her higher-ups learned of her actions, she would probably have to kiss her position as vice-captain goodbye. After all, an expert capable of casting a mana domain at Tier 3 was not an existence Soulfire would dare to casually offend. Just when Moonrain was contemplating how she should answer SHI plus Foam, a thick voice rang in everyone's ears. Yes. Of course you are qualified, Brother Black Flame, Southern Tiger said with a friendly smile on his face. I can agree on Soulfire's behalf to cooperate with you, Brother Black Flame, Captain. Moonrain was surprised when she heard Southern Tiger's words. This was definitely the first time since Soulfire's establishment that they had accepted a 10 hours 90 minutes split. Even when they partnered with a super guild previously, they had only offered the super guild a 20 hours 80 minutes split. Moreover, that was mainly because Soulfire only played a supporting role in the job. However, they were clearly going to be the main contributors to the Tyrian raid. They bore significant risk, yet all they would get for their efforts was merely 10% of the loot. If news of this spread, it would negatively affect the adventurer team's reputation. It wouldn't matter even if SHI plus Foam was a Tier 3 Sword King who had a mana domain. It's fine. I know what I'm doing, Southern Tiger said, smiling. Have everyone get ready. I understand. Seeing Southern Tiger's expression, Moonrain had no choice but to prepare the team for the upcoming raid. Meanwhile, when Wu Lingling and the others saw this scene, they couldn't help but gape in shock. They actually agreed. I doubt even super guilds will get a 10 hours 90 minutes split in such a situation, right? Originally, Wu Lingling and the others felt that it was unlikely for Soulfire to accept SHI plus Foam's absurd demand. After all, accepting a 10 hours 90 minutes split would be no different from working for free. It should be known that the average Tier 4 mythic bosses would only drop around 30 to 40 items, with only 3 or 4 of these items being actually useful. If Soulfire gave SHI plus Foam 90% of Tyrion's loot, SHI plus Foam would be taking all of the best items dropped. As for the remaining items, even if they were valuable, they probably couldn't hold a candle for the best items. Rather than take on such a thankless job, Soulfire would be better off killing a weaker boss. Not only would Soulfire gain a bigger harvest, but the risk it had to take would also be smaller. It was also because of this reason that players would typically split the loot evenly when cooperating to take down a powerful boss. Depending on the strength of the partic IP-8ing forces, the loot division ratio might go down to 30 to 70. However, never would anyone accept a 10 hours 90 minutes split. While Wu Lingling and the other students were having a hushed discussion among themselves, SHI plus Feng suddenly turned to Southern Tiger and said, "Since you have agreed to my request, can you give me command over the team afterward?" Upon hearing SHI plus Feng's words, Wu Lingling and the others immediately started growing nervous again. A team's commanding rights were crucial to a team. Whoever held these rights held the life and death of everyone on the team. Hence, what SHI plus Feng for was the right to manage the life and death of Soulfire's members. It might be fine under normal Cirque Yume stances, but the various powers were desperately fighting to get a lead over each other in the miniature ancient world right now. If Southern Tiger's team ended up suffering a team wipe here, it would bring catastrophic to Soulfire. "That won't be a problem," Southern Tiger said, nodding without hesitation. "We'll leave everything to you, Brother Black Flame." Immediately after hearing Southern Tiger's response, Moonrain, who was issuing commands to the team, frowned and looked at Southern Tiger as if she was looking at a stranger. Eventually, unable to help herself, she quietly whispered to Southern Tiger, "Captain, isn't this a little too much? If he improperly commands us into a team wipe, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it'll ruin all of our plans in the miniature ancient world. Is this really worth it?" Soulfire had great ambitions for the miniature ancient world. Otherwise, the adventurer team wouldn't have sent Southern Tiger, a half-step Tier 5 expert, into the miniature world and had him restart his progress from Tier 3. Yet, now, not only was Southern Tiger having their team of experts take on great risk to work as free labor for SHI plus Feng, but he was even handing over the rights to command the team to SHI plus Feng. What Southern Tiger was doing was no different than gambling all of Soulfire's investments in the miniature ancient world on SHI plus Feng. "Yes." Southern Tiger firmly answered. "Yes." Hearing Southern Tiger's answer, Moonrain couldn't help but take another look at SHI plus Feng, a confused look appearing on her face. While it was indeed amazing for someone to be capable of casting a mana domain at Tier 3, it wasn't so strange to see such people in the miniature ancient world. Anyone who was once an Apex expert with a mana domain in the outside world could probably accomplish the same feat after all, they were merely retraining their game characters. The experiences they had accumulated in the outside world remained. Meanwhile, seeing the confusion on his vice-captain's face, Southern Tiger smiled and whispered, "You might not know this since you haven't reached the Tier 5 threshold yet, but his mana domain is different from the pseudo-mana domains you've seen those legendary experts cast when they were at Tier 3. His is a complete mana domain." "A complete mana domain?" Moonrain grew even more confused. "What's the difference?" In her recognition, a mana domain was a mana domain. It was something that allowed players to take control over the mana in the area surrounding them. At most, mana domains would differ in terms of strength. She had never heard of there being fake mana domains. Seeing that Moonrain did not believe him, Southern Tiger helplessly shook his head and said, "Of course there is a difference. It isn't a matter of a mana domain being weak or strong. If players wish to cast a complete mana domain, they need to satisfy two conditions." "What conditions?" Moonrain asked curiously. "The first condition is to be a Grandmaster Magician," Southern Tiger said. Then, he turned to look at the distant SHI plus Feng, a solemn expression appearing on his face as he continued, "The second condition is to construct a mana body beyond the epic rank at Tier 3. Chapter 25, Future Tier 6. Chapter 25, Future Tier 6. His mana body has reached beyond the epic rank. Moonrain was filled with an indescribable sense of shock when she heard Southern Tiger's explanation. Previously, in her opinion, SHI plus Feng was merely a peak expert with some strength. Even if he could cast a mana domain at Tier 3, he should, at most, be a match for Soulfire's strongest combatant Blue Smile. While SHI plus Feng indeed deserved Soulfire's respect for having such strength, he still wasn't at the level of being an existence Soulfire would fear. After all, Soulfire was one of the few top adventurer teams in GODS domain. However, after hearing Southern Tiger's explanation, SHI plus Feng's value in Moonrain's eyes changed drastically. Before the miniature Ancient World's introduction, most players and powers were unaware that apart from bronze, silver, and gold, a higher rank known as epic existed for mana bodies. However, constructing an epic mana body at Tier 3 was nigh impossible, and even Tier 5 experts who had the opportunity to construct an epic mana body had failed to do so. Meanwhile, according to the various superpowers investigation, every expert who managed to construct an epic mana body had eventually grown to become a Tier 6 GOD ranked expert without fail. Because of this, many powers and experts came to the miniature Ancient World after its introduction into GODS domain. Every one of these people was thinking of constructing an epic mana body and becoming a Tier 6 GOD ranked expert in the future. However, constructing an epic mana body was easier said than done. Even Southern Tiger, someone who was once a half-step Tier 5 expert, had failed to construct an epic mana body and could only settle for a gold mana body. Yet, it was now revealed that SHI plus Feng possessed an epic mana body. **** a future GOD ranked expert, is it? When Moonrain looked at SHI plus Feng slowly walking over to them, understanding and envy filled her eyes. Although Tier 6 GOD ranked experts were regarded as GODS domain's strongest combat power, most Tier 6 experts operated very secretively. Under normal Cirque stances, even Tier 5 experts had difficulty meeting a Tier 6 expert. As for other players, meeting a Tier 6 expert was no different than winning a lottery. Meanwhile, an independent expert who had the potential to become a Tier 6 GOD ranked expert in the future was someone even super guilds would try to befriend, let alone Soulfire. Thus, Southern Tiger's previous behavior was completely reasonable. While Moonrain was immersed in her thoughts, SHI plus Feng had also arrived before Southern Tiger and Moonrain. Looking at SHI plus Feng, Southern Tiger smiled and asked, "Have you finished preparing on your side, Brother Black Flame?" Yes, SHI plus Feng nodded. Then, in a slightly awkward tone, he said, "All I'm missing now is the data of your members. Can I trouble you to show me everyone's data?" Honestly, even SHI plus Feng wasn't 100% confident in taking down Tyrion. After all, the standard of his weapons, equipment, and skills was subpar at best. He was merely relying on his mana domain to weaken Tyrion and lower the raid difficulty. As for whether the raid could succeed, it would still depend on the team's overall standard. However, player data was private information. If someone had their player data exposed, it could potentially lead to them getting targeted by those with malicious intent. Hence, whether guild players or independent players, nobody would willingly share their player data unless they knew the other party could be trusted. As the commander for the upcoming raid, it was normal for SHI plus Feng to ask for his team members' player data. However, to Soulfire's team, this was probably a very tall order to fulfill. This was also why player teams wouldn't casually pass SS command over the team to an outsider. However, as soon as SHI plus Feng finished speaking, Moonrain suddenly handed SHI plus Feng a list and said, "This is a general list of the weapons and equipment our team members have. I can also give you a list of their skills and spells if you need it." Upon receiving the list of data, SHI plus Feng couldn't help but look at Moonrain in slight surprise. He failed to understand why this woman, who previously expressed mild disgust toward him, would suddenly behave so cooperatively. However, he quickly pushed this thought to the back of his head and calmly nodded, saying, "Thanks. This much is enough." As SHI plus Feng read through the provided player data one after another, Southern Tiger asked in a slightly proud tone, "What do you think of our team's standard, Brother Black Flame?" Southern Tiger was relatively confident in the team he led. While his team might be inferior to the various super guilds' frontline teams, it was top tier when placed among the various first-rate guilds' frontline teams. "Not bad," SHI plus Feng said, nodding. According to the list, apart from Southern Tiger and Moonrain, who were armed to the teeth with epic weapons and equipment, the other team members were mainly geared in epic weapons and equipment as well. Moreover, these epic items were all custom-made by players. They had much higher compatibility with their users than epic weapons and equipment obtained through killing monsters. Although there was also a small minority of players geared in level 100 Dark Gold equipment, the gear they used was an incredibly rare, custom-made 8-piece Dark Gold set equipment. The effect of such a set was much better than 8 pieces of randomly matched epic equipment. Soulfire's team was definitely ranked at the top in the current 100 Flow City. Only the various Super Guilds teams could possibly beat it. I'm relieved that you think so, Southern Tiger said, smiling. Everyone in the team has magic scrolls and attribute potions allocated to them already. I'll leave you with command over the team now, Brother Black Flame. Subsequently, after receiving the rights to command Soulfire's team, SHI plus Feng started inviting Soulfire's members to his team. Meanwhile, when Wu Lingling and the others saw this scene, they couldn't help but be surprised and excited. What? Instructor SHI plus is actually going to be commanding Soulfire's members? Instructor SHI plus is amazing. What kind of magic did he use? I doubt even our academy's dean can receive such treatment. CRAP. Is this for real? Not only do we get to raid a boss with Soulfire's members, but our instructor will even be the one commanding the team. People from the other class says will definitely think I'm crazy if I tell them about this. Originally, everyone had already been greatly shocked by the strength SHI plus Feng displayed. This was especially true for the students who were still worried about SHI plus Feng's capabilities as an instructor. After all, SHI plus Feng was a dismissed guild leader from Shadow. He had no background or resources in GODS domain whatsoever. While it was true that he could teach them many combat techniques, GODS domain was a world that revolved around resources. Only by having better resources could one have a better time developing in GODS domain. This had long since become common knowledge in GODS domain. However, SHI plus Feng had now shown that not only could he teach them combat techniques, but he had also shown that he had the strength to attract the interest of major powers such as the Soulfire Adventurer team. With such strength, there was no way he couldn't earn a bunch of resources. Meanwhile, after SHI plus Feng took charge of Soulfire's members, he quickly split the team's MTS across 9 parties, each party having 2 MTS and 4 healers. Once the raid began, these 9 tank parties would take turns tanking the boss. As for everyone else, SHI plus Feng merely told them to attack with everything they've got. Will everything really be alright, Captain? Moon Rain couldn't help but ask Southern Tiger after hearing SHI plus Feng's strategy. Although she trusted Southern Tiger's judgment and understood that SHI plus Feng was an expert who even super guilds would try to befriend, being a powerful expert and a capable commander were 2 entirely different things. Bosses at the mythic rank or above would possess a certain degree of intelligence. If the commander of a team was incapable of making the right decisions at the right time during a boss raid, it could easily lead to severe casualties and possibly even a team wipe. Against a realm lord like Tyrion, they would need at least 4 tier 3 MTS taking turns sharing the damage under normal Circume stances. If they only sent 2 tier 3 MTS to tank Tyrion's attacks, even if these MTS didn't get one-shotted by the boss, the healers wouldn't be able to keep up with their healing. After all, the gap in basic attributes was too massive. Otherwise, they wouldn't have found it impossible to raid Tyrion previously. Probably. When Southern Tiger saw how SHI plus Feng had arranged the team, he couldn't help but lose confidence in his judgment as well. While it was true that mana domains had a weakening effect against monsters, a mana domain cast by a tier 3 player should have very little effect against a realm lord like Tyrion. Even after being subjected to the effects of SHI plus Feng's mana domain, Tyrion would still be too strong for just 2 tier 3 MTS to tank it. Probably. Moon Rain was rendered speechless when she heard Southern Tiger's uncertain tone. They had truly gotten themselves into trouble this time. Now, they could only hope that the partners HI plus P this time would be enough to give SHI plus Feng a good impression of Soulfire. That way, they would have an easier time explaining themselves to the other captains. While Southern Tiger and Moon Rain were discussing their chances of success, SHI plus Feng said through the team chat, "Alright, let's begin. First party, advance." Upon hearing SHI plus Feng's command, the first party consisting of 2 level 100, Tier 3 Guardian Knights and their 4 accompanying healers promptly charged into the plaza. Then, as soon as the 2 Guardian Knights stepped into the plaza, Tyrion's eyes promptly snapped open. Immediately afterward, everyone present suddenly experienced a suffocating sensation. Even Southern Tiger, who stood 200 yards away, was no exception. He felt as if someone had just poured a bucket of ice-cold water onto him. Not good. Run away quickly, Southern Tiger shouted. However, by the time Southern Tiger had finished speaking, Tyrion had already teleported and appeared in front of the 2 Guardian Knights. When everyone laid eyes on Tyrion's alluring figure and enchanting eyes, they momentarily found themselves mesmerized. However, this mesmerizing feeling only lasted for a moment as everyone's attention was quickly drawn to the purple spear Tyrion had pulled out of thin air. Afterward, everyone felt as if an invisible mountain had just landed on them, their bodies becoming inexplicably heavy. Die, intruders. After uttering one simple sentence, Tyrion raised her spear into the air and summoned a purple light that instantly enveloped the entire plaza. Chapter 2952. Chapter 2952. Chapter 26, Sword God? We're really in trouble now. Southern Tiger inwardly sighed when he looked at the purple glow spreading out from Tyrion. Previously, he thought that Tyrion was merely a realm lord with a special bloodline, which would explain her ridiculously high HP. Meanwhile, so long as they had SHI plus Feng's mana domain, the difficulty of raiding Tyrion should be no different than that of an ordinary mythic boss. However, after seeing Tyrion taking action, Southern Tiger immediately realized that he had severely underestimated the realm lord. Rather than an ordinary mythic boss, Tyrion's strength was already on par with superior mythic monsters. Even on the main continent, superior mythic monsters were incredibly challenging opponents. This was because ordinary Tier 4 MTS were incapable of surviving the attacks of a superior mythic of the same level. A Tier 4 metric tons would need a fragmented legendary SHI plus ELD at the very minimum to survive against a superior mythic. Now that their team was entirely composed of Tier 3 players, even if they had a mana domain supporting them, challenging Tyrion would still be suicidal. In fact, they wouldn't even be able to escape from Tyrion, let alone kill her. This was because every monster that reached the superior mythic rank or possessed strength rivaling superior mythics would have a mana domain. Meanwhile, in the face of a mana domain, all players below Tier 3 were nothing but ant. Players couldn't even last more than a hit within a superior mythic monster's mana domain. At this time, Southern Tiger wasn't the only person to realize the desperate situation. Moon Rain and the other experts from Soulfire also fell into despair. This was because they understood that so long as Tyrion's mana domain enveloped them, only one outcome would await them: death. Yet, despite knowing this, none of them had the ability to resist. They could only watch as Tyrion's mana domain rapidly approached them. However, just when the purple glow was about to envelop the 2 Guardian Knights, who stood at the forefront of the team, a low shout suddenly entered everyone's ears. Halt! Immediately afterward, a grey mist rapidly spread from SHI plus Feng's body and collided with the expanding purple glow. Then, as if hitting an immovable wall, the purple glow came to a grinding halt. It stopped. When Southern Tiger saw the clash between purple and red happening before him, he couldn't help but turn to look at SHI plus Feng in surprise and confusion. Not all mana domains were equal in God's domain. Instead, the strength of mana domains varied based on the degree of control its user had over mana. Meanwhile, a superior mythic monster's mana domain was superior to even a mana domain cast by an actual Tier 4 player. This was because the quality of mana superior mythic monsters held in their body far surpassed that of Tier 4 players. Meanwhile, the greatest difference that separated Tier 4 players from Tier 3 players was the quality of the mana they possessed. It was utterly impossible for a Tier 3 player to surpass a Tier 4 player in this regard. So, logically, a Tier 3 player's mana domain should be inferior to a superior mythic's mana domain, even if said player's mana domain was a complete one. Yet, now, the mana domain SHI plus Foamcast had managed to fight Tyrion's mana domain to a standstill. This situation had completely shattered Southern Tiger's knowledge of mana domains. However, at this time, Southern Tiger wasn't the only one feeling surprised and confused right now. SHI plus Foam, who was class HI plusing with Tyrion using his mana domain, was also surprised. Though, SHI plus Foam's reason for being surprised was slightly different from Southern Tiger's. What powerful mana! I didn't think her mana would've completely liquidized already. Is this the strength of a primordial archaic species? SHI plus Foam inwardly exclaimed as he looked at Tyrion. Thank goodness my mana body has already reached the legendary rank. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. In God's domain, the average Tier 4 mythic monster's mana would only take on a mist-like state. Even among superior mythic monsters, only a small portion would start condensing a portion of their mana into liquid. Yet, even though Tyrion wasn't at the superior mythic rank, she already possessed liquid mana. Apart from dragons and other apex races, SHI plus Foam had never seen other monsters capable of such a feat. Brother Black Flame. This boss's strength has far exceeded our initial expectations. Should we retreat and discuss a countermeasure for now? Southern Tiger asked SHI plus Foam through the team chat. Upon hearing Southern Tiger's question, the other members of Soulfire couldn't help but be rendered speechless. For a moment, they even wondered if the Southern Tiger in front of them was the captain they knew. They were already in such a precarious situation, yet Southern Tiger was still asking for SHI plus Foam's opinion on whether they should retreat. Of the Soulfire members present, only Moonrain was not too surprised by Southern Tiger's actions. Though, she still couldn't help but grow anxious as she waited for SHI plus Foam's answer. No, that won't be necessary, SHI plus Foam said as he glanced at Southern Tiger. Then, he returned his gaze onto Tyrion and calmly said, "Everyone, move according to plan." Not necessary? Southern Tiger was confused as he looked at SHI plus Foam's calm behavior. In the current situation, even a layman would understand that the raid was hopeless. Although Tyrion's mana domain was being kept in check now, the same could be said for SHI plus Foam's mana domain. Meanwhile, without a mana domain suppressing Tyrion, it'd be utterly impossible for their team to raid Tyrion. They simply didn't have the DPS to take her down. Continuing the raid would only lead to the team's annihilation. SHI plus Foam was an expert capable of casting a complete mana domain at Tier 3, so there was no way he wouldn't understand this. So, Southern Tiger couldn't understand why SHI plus Foam insisted they continue the raid. However, before Southern Tiger could make sense of SHI plus Foam's decision, he saw SHI plus Foam taking a step forward and instantly appearing within 100 yards of Tyrion. Then, SHI plus Foam unsheathed one of his longswords and gathered mana around his blade. "Break!" SHI plus Foam shouted as he swung his sword at the SPACE before him. Suddenly, the grey mist that protected everyone from Tyrion's mana domain transformed into a sharp blade that slashed at the purple glow. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of an explosion, the purple glow dissipated, and the grey mist instantly enveloped Tyrion and the rest of the plaza. Subsequently, the frightening aura Tyrion radiated weakened drastically. Meanwhile, along with this unexpected development, the entire plaza fell silent as if time had stopped. Tyrion's mana domain is gone. What did Instructor SHI plus do? At this moment, whether it was SHI plus Foam students or Soulfire's experts, everyone gaped in shock as they looked at the grey mist that dominated the plaza. Specifically, they were shocked by the sudden disappearance of Tyrion's mana domain. Everyone present had watched videos of Apex experts with mana domains class HI plusing before. However, in these videos, even when a stronger mana domain clashed with a weaker mana domain, the weaker mana domain would only have its radius forcibly reduced. Never had they seen a mana domain completely dominating another mana domain. Yet, in a situation where his mana domain strength was equal to Tyrion's mana domain, SHI plus Foam had managed to collapse Tyrion's mana domain. This situation had completely shattered everyone's understanding of mana domains. Domain transformation. He actually knows domain transformation. Southern Tiger was thunderstruck as he looked at the grey mist that dominated the plaza. Then, he turned to look at SHI plus Feng, a grave and confused expression appearing on his face as he muttered, "Who is he? Why is a sword God like him here? Domain transformation? Sword God?" Moon Rain grew confused when he overheard Southern Tiger's mutterings. "What do you mean, Captain?" In response to Moon Rain's question, Southern Tiger looked at her sternly and said, "There is no benefit in you knowing these things right now. All you need to know is that he is a sword God. Also, I need you to log off now and contact the head captain. Say that we found a nameless sword God who's not affiliated with any power." Domain transformation. This was an unfamiliar term to most players in God's domain. Even among peak experts, only a very small minority knew about domain transformation, and Southern Tiger was one of the lucky few to know about it. Simply put, domain transformation was a technique that only experts who had achieved ultimate mastery over mana could use. In God's domain, only Tier 6 God ranked experts could touch upon the extremes of mana. To be precise, only players who have achieved ultimate mastery over mana could reach Tier 6. He's a sword God. How is this possible? Moon Rain instinctively tried to refute Southern Tiger's words. After all, there should be no reason why a Tier 6 God ranked expert would come to the miniature ancient world. However, looking at the serious expression on Southern Tiger's face, Moon Rain understood that what he said should be true. So, without asking for any additional explanation, she quickly said, "I understand." After saying so, Moon Rain promptly logged out of the game, ignoring the fact that she would incur a harsh penalty from doing so. Chapter 27, Realm of Gods. Chapter 27, Realm of Gods. Why did the Vice Captain log off? What happened to Soulfire's Vice Captain? Is Soulfire planning to give up? The instant Moon Rain logged off, everyone on the team received a notification indicating that she had logged out of the game. However, apart from Southern Tiger, everyone else couldn't help but be confused by this situation. It was especially true for Wu Lingling and the other students. Unity was crucial in a boss raid. Although Wu Lingling and the others didn't know what kind of influence Moon Rain held in Soulfire's team, as the vice-team leader of Soulfire's team, her sudden disappearance definitely wouldn't benefit the team in any way. After all, Moon Rain had chosen to leave the raid even at the cost of incurring the penalty for forcibly logging out of the game. This fact alone was more than enough to influence the team's mental state. If Soulfire's team were to suddenly withdraw from the raid, death would be the only outcome awaiting them. After all, Soulfire's team was the main fighting force in this raid, while their group of students was only here to act as mascots. However, before the situation could get out of hand, Southern Tiger suddenly turned to SHI plus Feng and apologetically said, "I'm sorry Brother Black Flame. Something urgent suddenly came up for Moon Rain, so she needed to log off immediately to deal with it. However, her absence won't affect Soulfire's performance. Moreover, to express our apology, we will help you take down the boss at all costs. Soulfire won't take any of the loot, either. Help us take down the boss at all costs. Won't take any of the loot." Wu Lingling and the other students couldn't help but be dumbfounded when they heard Southern Tiger's words. They also felt that Southern Tiger was joking with them. While it was true that Moon Rain's absence would affect the team's performance slightly, Southern Tiger, the de facto team leader of Soulfire's team, was still present. So long as Southern Tiger was still willing to let SHI plus Feng have command over the team, none of Soulfire's members would dare have any objections against SHI plus Feng's leaders. HI plus P. They were members of a top adventurer team, after all. Even if they were dissatisfied with SHI plus Feng's leaders. HI plus P, their honor and professional ethics prevented them from behaving excessively. However, it was a different story if Southern Tiger gave all of the boss's loot to SHI plus Feng. No amount of professionalism would allow them to work for free while taking on a huge risk. Ever since God's domain became the second world for humans, many expert players had already bet their lives on God's domain. So, even ordinary experts would never work for free, let alone Soulfire's main force members, who were experts among experts. It seems this southern tiger isn't as simple as he seems. I didn't think he would notice. SHI. Plus Feng was slightly surprised by Southern Tiger's actions. However, he did not show it on his face as he said, "Okay, I have no problem with that." Domain transformation was a technique that could only be accomplished by Pus. HI plusing the basic usage method of mana to its extremes. Meanwhile, this technique had an alias among those in the industry. Realm of GODS. The alias was used to refer to people who had reached the realm of God-ranked experts in terms of mana control. Only, the people who knew about this name and its meaning numbered incredibly few. Typically, only those with close ties to God-ranked experts would know about these things. Meanwhile, judging by Southern Tiger's behavior, it was evident that he knew something about the realm of GODS. "Captain, isn't this too much? Even if we end up succeeding in this raid, we'll still end up with a loss." Many of Soulfire's members couldn't help but express their concerns when they heard Southern Tiger's decision. While Soulfire was indeed a top adventurer team, the treatment Soulfire's members received was far inferior to Guild's players. Not only did Soulfire's members not receive a basic salary, but the distribution of the items they acquired through raiding bosses was done through internal auctions. Thus, if Soulfire's members wished to earn money, they would have to place their hopes on raiding bosses, picking up personal commissions, or completing commissions as signed by the adventurer team. It could be said that over 85% of their income relied on their own decisions. The adventurer team was only there to provide them with the opportunity to make money. Meanwhile, the reason why every one of them had paid a huge price to enter the miniature ancient world was so that they could hopefully make it big here. However, if they received no payment for helping in the Tyrian raid, it would cause them to miss out on many opportunities in the miniature ancient world later on. After looking at his teammates' anxious expressions, Southern Tiger calmly explained, "You don't need to worry about this. The adventurer team will compensate for all of your losses. Even if the adventurer team doesn't compensate you, I will fully compensate you myself." "Did you lose your mind, Captain? CRAP. Who is that black flame? Could that black flame be the heir of an international corporation?" The Soulfire members present placed great trust in Southern Tiger's words. Since Southern Tiger had already said he would cover their losses, everyone naturally had nothing else to say. Even so, they couldn't help but wonder about SHI plus Feng's ident. Tai. After all, even when the apex experts of super guilds came to Southern Tiger to commission a job, Southern Tiger had not given them such treatment. "Alright, everyone, listen to Brother Black Flame's command. Leave your discussions for later," Southern Tiger shouted when he saw his teammates whispering incessantly. Seeing that Southern Tiger was behaving seriously, the other Soulfire members promptly halted their discussions and encircled Tyrian as planned. Meanwhile, after Tyrian tried and failed to manipulate the mana around her several times, a look of confusion appeared on her face. Evidently, she did not expect to lose control over the mana surrounding her. Even so, Tyrian didn't dwell on the matter for too long as she promptly charged toward SHI plus Feng, the person standing nearest to her. Seeing this, SHI plus Feng immediately commanded, "Her attack is coming. You two knights, activate your divine protection and take the hit together. Also, use Justice Roar on the boss while you're at it." "No problem." The two Guardian Knights standing behind SHI plus Feng responded and stepped forward simultaneously. Then, they followed SHI plus Feng's command and activated their strongest defensive skill Divine Protection as they entered a defensive stance. Not only did the skill reduce the damage they took by 60%, but it also mitigated impact forces by 90%. Meanwhile, the skill had a duration of 30 seconds and a cooldown of 5 minutes. Subsequently, when Tyrian was within 30 yards of SHI plus Feng, one of the Guardian Knights started radiating a dazzling light as he let loose a deafening roar, his voice continuously echoing in Tyrion's mind and causing her intense pain. Now, Tyrion had no choice but to SHI plus feed her attention to the Guardian Knight. Only by doing so would the pain subside. The next moment, Tyrion SHI plus FTD her direction and charged for the two Guardian Knights instead, her spear poised to strike. Meanwhile, even without the surrounding mana amplifying Tyrion's strength, Tyrion's aura was so intimidating that the two Guardian Knights even subconsciously raised their SHI plus elds a little higher than usual. Boom! Accompanied by a loud boom, a frightening shockwave spread across the battlefield. Even those standing over 100 yards away felt their bodies shaking. As for the two Guardian Knights who received Tyrion's attack together, they stumbled 3 steps backward before they managed to stabilize their bodies. Their HPs had also fallen by more than 50%. They blocked it. Everyone widened their eyes in shock when they saw that the two Guardian Knights were still alive. Soulfire's various experts were especially dumbfounded. As veteran players in GODS domain, they had challenged many powerful bosses before. So, they could tell just how powerful Tyrion was when they felt her aura. The Realm Lord definitely wasn't an existence Tier 3 players could contend against. Even if Tyrion was incapable of using her mana domain right now, she was still much stronger than the average mythic boss. Yet, the two Guardian Knights had stopped her attack. It's doable. This damage is well within the tolerance of our healers. Quick! Heal those two back up. The boss is getting ready for another attack. When Soulfire's members saw that their two teammates' arms were only trembling slightly after receiving Tyrion's attack, they immediately grew ecstatic. In fact, they felt even more excited right now than when they saw SHI plus foam shattering Tyrion's mana domain. Meanwhile, out of everyone present, only SHI plus foam had reacted calmly to this outcome. What made Realm Lords powerful wasn't their above-average basic attributes. Instead, it was their ability to manipulate their surrounding mana to elevate the destructive power of their attacks. Now that Tyrion had lost that ability, even if she was a primordial archaic species, she was only slightly stronger than the average mythic boss. After all, unlike a true fallen angel, Tyrion did not possess extraordinary combat standards. If a Tier 3 metric tons was fully clad in custom-made epic equipment, tanking Tyrion's attacks would be no problem at all. Not to mention, Soulfire's MTS were frontline experts with high combat standards. Some of them were even refinement realm experts. So, relying on techniques to mitigate a portion of a mythic boss's damage was child's play for them. Everyone, start attacking the boss with everything you've got, SHI plus foam shouted when he saw that the two Guardian Knights had thoroughly secured Tyrion's aggro. Second party, get ready to step in as soon as divine protection is over. Everyone on the team had long since grown restless from watching. So, upon hearing SHI plus foam's command, they promptly started bombarding Tyrion with all sorts of attacks. Tier 3 spell, Flame Explosion. Tier 3 skill, Anti-Magic Slash. H. Plus Tier 3 skill, Storm Arrow. Tier 3 skills and spells bombarded Tyrion one after another. Even though Tyrion had dodged and blocked a portion of the attacks, she still took over 100 attacks to her body. Meanwhile, without her mana domain to weaken the attacks, damages in the hundreds of thousands started appearing above her head one after another. The boss's HP is falling. Quick! Everyone, increase your attacks. Someone shouted when they noticed Tyrion's HP falling gradually. Faced against the attacks of nearly 200 players, even Tyrion's battle recovery could not mitigate the damage she received. There's a chance. At this rate, we'll definitely be able to down the boss. Everyone grew even more excited when they saw Tyrion's HP falling steadily. The rotation of 9 tank parties plus Southern Tiger, who was capable of tanking Tyrion's attacks all by himself, created a perfect defensive cycle as every MT had sufficient downtime to wait for their defensive skills to come off cooldown. Meanwhile, thanks to this perfect defensive cycle, everyone else on the team could focus solely on attacking. So long as no accidents happened, it would only be a matter of time before Tyrion fell. Initially, everyone had merely thought that they had a chance at taking down Tyrion. However, after the raid continued for some time, everyone already understood that they had a high likelihood of killing Tyrion, the Realm Lord of the Withered Ruins. Meanwhile, if that happened, they would become the first team to successfully raid a HELL mode regional dungeons boss in the miniature ancient world. It should be known that this was the first kill of a HELL mode regional dungeon. This achievement would get their names recorded on the totem outside the dungeon. Subsequently, as time said, little by little, everyone on the team also grew more and more excited. After more than 4 hours of continuous combat, everyone was already reduced to a haggard state. Among SHI plus Feng students, Wu Lingling's complexion even looked a little pale. Yet, despite this being the case, there was not the slightest sign of sluggishness in her movements. On the contrary, her movements had become even more fluid as she continuously simplified and stripped away her superfluous movements. The power of her skills also grew more and more powerful. Interesting. SHI plus Feng also noticed the change in Wu Lingling's skills, and he couldn't help but be surprised. She's only half a step away from reaching the truth realm. However, SHI plus Feng didn't pay too much attention to Wu Lingling's improvement. Quickly, he returned his attention to Tyrion. Eventually, after nearly 5 hours of continuous battle, Tyrion finally collapsed under everyone's bombardment, her HP falling to 0. Chapter 28, God's First Appearance. Chapter 28, God's First Appearance. As Tyrion's unreconciled scream faded from the plaza, silence suddenly enveloped the entire battlefield. Is she dead? Did we do it? Whether it was SHI plus Feng students or Soulfire's members, everyone looked at Tyrion's motionless body on the ground, antic. Elation and apprehension filling their hearts. After hours of continuous combat, everyone had long since grown exhausted. They were merely holding on by virtue of their willpower. Meanwhile, as the boss of a HELL mode regional dungeon, a realm lord, and a mythic-ranked primordial archaic species, there was no way Tyrion would fall so easily no matter how they looked at it. Not to mention, it wasn't unprecedented for powerful bosses to resurrect with full health after death. Many teams had suffered huge losses because they did not expect the bosses they raided to have such an ability. Thus, even if a boss in God's domain died, one couldn't simply write it off as dead. At this time, one of Soulfire's team leaders asked Southern Captain, "Captain, this boss should be fully dead, right?" As soon as this party leader posed his question, many of the other Soulfire members around him turned to look at Southern Tiger with curious gazes as well. Although they were all main force members of Soulfire, they were merely the adventurer team's 11th main force that Southern Tiger managed. When it came to raiding powerful bosses, they weren't as experienced as Southern Tiger. This was because Southern Tiger would often follow Soulfire's head captain on hunts for Tier 5 bosses. He had even fought against a Tier 5 dragon before. Met with everyone's expectant gazes, Southern Tiger was momentarily at a loss for words. Just as he was opening his mouth to say something, he suddenly closed his mouth again, a heavy expression appearing on his face as he noticed cracks appearing on Tyrion's body. Immediately afterward, streaks of dazzling purple light escaped from these cracks. Additionally, as the cracks on Tyrion's body increased in size and number, an indescribably powerful aura also spread out from Tyrion's body. This new aura was magnitudes stronger than Tyrion's original aura, and everyone felt as if they had just been put into a solid block of steel, their bodies becoming immobilized. No way. She really resurrected. This is cheating. How are we even supposed to beat her? Qin Wuchen and the others couldn't help but be dumbfounded by this situation. Even Wu Lingling, who had the toughest spirit out of SHI plus Feng students, couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile in this situation. With everyone's present conditions, they couldn't even beat Tyrion in her original state, let alone her strengthened state. Is this a primordial archaic species ability? At this time, even SHI plus Feng couldn't help but frown as he looked at Tyrion hovering in the air. Although he could still use his mana domain to suppress Tyrion, over half of the team already had their concentration pushed to their limits. Apart from stamina, the other hidden attribute that restricted players' bodies was concentration. If players had their concentration reduced to a certain level, even if they still had plenty of stamina to spare, they would still lose control over their bodies, becoming unable to lift even a finger. However, just when SHI plus Feng was pondering whether they should retreat, Tyrion suddenly exploded into a dazzling brilliance that enveloped the entire plaza, nay, the entire city. Despite the sky being dimly lit just a moment ago, it had now become as bright as day. A moment later, a dazzling figure had walked out of the epicenter of the light explosion. Then, a staircase made of light formed under this person's feet, and this person slowly walked down to the plaza. Meanwhile, This person was none other than Tyrion. Only, at this time, her wings had already disappeared. Moreover, her expression was no longer the same as before. Rather than anger, her face now depicted indifference, her eyes containing neither joy nor sorrow. With each step Tyrion took down the staircase, everyone on the plaza could feel the pressure on their bodies increasing. By the time Tyrion had stepped onto the plaza, the intensity of her aura had also reached its peak, causing everyone but SHI plus Feng and Southern Tiger to involuntarily collapse onto the ground. Divine might! How is this possible? Southern Tiger's eyes were filled with incredulity as he looked at Tyrion, his body doing its best to resist the mental pressure exerted by her frightening aura. Divine might. It was a name given to the auras radiated by GODS in GODS domain. It was an aura capable of making all creatures beneath Tier 6 submit and grow fearful. At this time, let alone Southern Tiger, even SHI plus Feng couldn't help but be shocked. He never thought that the mythic-ranked Tyrion would be a Tier 6 GOD. Tier 6 GODS were existences standing at the absolute apex of GODS domain. Even a Tier 6 GOD-ranked expert would have no choice but to flee if they faced a Tier 6 GOD in a one-on-one situation. At least a group of Tier 6 GOD-ranked experts would be needed to contend against such an existence. Meanwhile, such an existence had actually appeared in the miniature ancient world. Moreover, the location of her advent was merely a level 100 regional dungeon. As for the people on the ground, they, too, wore dumbfounded expressions on their faces. Although they couldn't move their bodies right now, they possessed a certain degree of understanding toward divine might. Moreover, seeing as Tyrion had managed to suppress them to such an extent using her aura alone proved that she could only be a Tier 6 GOD and nothing else. A GOD. An actual Tier 6 GOD. Am I dreaming? Shock was the only thing present in everyone's minds right now as they looked at Tyrion. They were so shocked that even their previous despair and helplessness had disappeared. Tier 6 GODS were practically myths in GODS domain. Most players could only see a Tier 6 GOD through the videos recorded by some Tier 6 GOD-ranked experts. Meanwhile, every time a Tier 6 GOD appeared would also result in a great upheaval in GODS domain. This was because apart from representing the apex of strength in GODS domain, GODS also represented the biggest opportunity players could find. However, among the fallen crowd, one person paid less attention to Tyrion and paid more attention to SHI plus Feng. Meanwhile, this person was none other than Wu Lingling. Who exactly is Instructor SHI plus? Confusion and curiosity filled Wu Lingling as she looked at SHI plus Feng, who remained unperturbed in front of Tyrion. Logically, a Tier 6 GODS divine might shouldn't be something Tier 3 players could withstand. Although resisting a GODS divine might mainly depended on one's willpower, basic attributes still played an important role. Meanwhile, even a famous expert like Southern Tiger was barely keeping himself on his feet. Yet, SHI plus Feng, whose basic attributes were vastly inferior to Southern Tiger, remained in his normal state. While Wu Lingling tried to make sense of SHI plus Feng's composure, Tyrion also looked toward SHI plus Feng, a hint of surprise appearing on her face. Interesting, Tyrion whispered under her breath, the corners of her mouth lifting slightly. Then she softly said to everyone present, I didn't think you mortals would dare tracebar SS here and even defeat my doppelganger. Normally, I would have bequeathed you with eternal death, but I will spare you as an acknowledgement of your glory as the victors. You can also take this treasure chest as a reward for your efforts. However, should you step into this place again, you will be turned into dust forever. After saying so, Tyrion gently waved her hand, summoning a gigantic spatial rift above the plaza. Immediately afterward, a powerful suction force pulled everyone into the spatial rift, removing them from the plaza. Meanwhile, after SHI plus Feng and the others had disappeared, Tyrion looked up into the sky. Specifically, she was looking at the place beyond the sky. Has the time finally come? Tyrion silently whispered a sentence before disappearing from the plaza as well. At the same time as Tyrion vanished from the plaza, the outside of the withered ruins had also exploded with commotion. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.